welcome you to episode 2 of the Great Lakes Permaculture Design Collaborative podcast. This is a collaborative that formed in 2016 to bring together 3 regional permaculturists to innovate permaculture practices in design and education. My name is Rhonda, and I'm here with William and Milton Dixon, William Faith and Milton Dixon. And this week we'll be talking about water quality in the city and strategies for urban permaculture systems regarding water. So before we get into that topic for today, we wanted to check in for a few minutes about what's going on with our own practices. So Milton, what is new for you?
Well, about a week ago, I made some pickles. Made about 5.5 gallons of pickles. Sauerkraut, and then like a random mixed pickle. And I have since taken ill and have not really checked in on it, but I got a nice picture, text picture here of the sauerkraut. So let me just bring this up here. This but you can't talk. Hold on a second. Here we go. Now you can talk. But this is the sauerkraut pickle. It's just a real simple. It was red cabbage and white cabbage, and that one turned out pretty well. Apparently, smells really yummy is the word. The other pickle did not turn out and smells gross. So that's too bad. I really haven't had that many failures with pickles, but yeah. So that's too bad. But it was still worth doing. We have about 1.5 gallons of sauerkraut now. Yeah, so I'm pretty excited. And William and I were talking beforehand off air. I don't know if you can see these. These are carrot pickles that my friend made, and they are about I think they're about 1.5 years old now. They didn't ferment for 1.5 years, but they've been in the fridge for 1.5 years for sure, and they're still good. So very salty.
Yeah. Yeah. So by pickles, you're talking about fermented lactobacteria or lactobacillus fermentation process, and not vinegar pickling.
No.
Yeah.
No. Those aren't pickles. I don't know. I don't know what you're thinking.
Yeah.
So.
I hear that. Well, are you complete, Milton? Are you? That's what you wanted to share today?
I am totally complete. Thank you.
Excellent.
And then for myself, I think I had a little bit of a freeze there. For myself, I will say I've been traveling, so I haven't done a lot other than reintegrate after traveling this week. But I know that bulbs are coming up out of the ground, and birds are singing spring songs, and I have another round of pruning to do on the fruit trees, so and seedlings to get going, and new rounds of composting, like intensive composting to happen, so I have fresh compost to mix into my seedling mixes and transplants. So that's what I am up to. And yeah, William.
Right. As mentioned before, Milton and I were talking off air about a little bit of some brine fermentation, and this is a 6-month-old kraut that I've had sitting out on a counter that was behind stuff and never got refrigerated. So just interested to see what's in here. This is just some cabbage and a little jalapeno for a little zip, and so interested to see what that's going to be like when we get around to that. Beyond that, for myself, The interesting stuff is just ordered a bunch of stuff for first round of microgreens that I'm about to get going, and really excited about the wasabi mustard in particular. I think that sounds fun. I've never tried wasabi mustard microgreens, but I'm curious to see where that goes. And talking with a design client in the south of France for a farmed animal sanctuary that actually has some acreage to it at the foothills of the Pyrenees, which is really, really juicy for me. So excited about that. And other than that, looking to talk about water in the city. That's me. Check.
So yeah, so water in the city. So we wanted to start off just like talking about understanding how your city, your home, your environment fits within a watershed. So we can just do a round on that a little bit and talk about watersheds. So let's start with Milton on that and go to William.
Well, I mean, generally, that was one of the first things I do when I have some KML maps in Google Earth that are like the complete watersheds of the United States, and they show all the little catchment portions and everything. And I'll go in and check that out. But you can also often find maps, you know, at the municipal level, county level. Yeah, and knowing like where I am, my house is located at basically a point between two watersheds, and so I can go, you know, basically 10 feet that way and I'm in one watershed, and 10 feet that way and I'm in the other watershed. So, and knowing, it just kind of gives you a framework for the collective, the whole entire unit that you belong to and that you're a part of. That's how I like to think about it. And it also often can help you know whether you're above problems, below problems, you know, so if they're going to come your way. So that's what I think about watersheds.
I guess I think about watersheds as drainage basins predominantly, kind of where water travels within a specific region and where at what point you're at in it within that. And so developing a little bit of knowledge about that, I think, is essential. And basically, part of the reason I think that's important is because I think that your watershed defines the bioregion that you're in to a great extent, and that's kind of instrumental to understanding what bioregion you're in. A far more interesting way of determining where we are rather than arbitrary political lines drawn on a map. So we talk about that a lot in design, and so that's, I think, a central piece to understanding how water works and what role water plays in your life and how you interact with it. So that watershed literacy is central for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think I have much to add other than to understand how then that watershed is influenced, like the source of water that we have for our own homes, and then the watershed also kind of fits within that micro piece. I might be repeating something Milton said, but you know, like our house has a basement, and our house sits slightly below ridge, with most of the neighborhood's water flow moving toward us, and so there's some real impacts for that. And you know, it's important to think about that as a designer, about what's moving toward us on a micro level, you know, of just the neighborhood, as well as like the larger level, you know, considering where our municipality gets its water supply and how the uses and policies of governing bodies around that affects that water supply. So yeah, check. Yeah, so we wanted to also just talk about municipal water supply in general and how, you know, the things that cities do in order to supply a reasonable water supply, you know, fairly healthy water supply and what limits are. So, yeah, we can just go back around that way.
Well, you know, I live in Michigan, and we had all of the fun in Flint, and you know, I think that's it was discovered in Flint, but it's a legacy of, you know, years and years of infrastructure. People, you know, the municipalities don't even know what they have oftentimes in the ground in terms of piping, and then, you know, the older it gets, the more problems that it can cause, even if it's not lead pipes. And also, there's a fair amount of additives that they add to the water supply. You know, I mean, fluoride being one, but also chlorine or chloramine, depending on what the localities do. And that can, for instance, be a problem with pickles. So if I added, or I would even say that my wife tried to start a sourdough starter with tap water and was not successful, and figured out, oh, I shouldn't be using tap water because there's all chloramine. In my case, it's chloramine left over, and that will actually kill then the bacteria that you're trying to grow. So,
yeah, I know. Like, I keep an aquarium, you know, which is part of our household. And the city did some sort of fluctuation, and I actually like lost fish. And if I hadn't had that impact, I wouldn't have known that the city had been messing with things that affected the pH levels, and in their treatment of the municipal water supply, they adjust it all of the time. For me, it's there's a large reservoir that is the source of water for Bloomington, Indiana, and you know, it's also a recreation area. So there's, you know, gas boats, gas powered engines, you know, all kinds of things that affect blooms of different plants and fluctuations in the biochemistry of the water all the time. And so the city has to test and manipulate that water supply, and they use chemicals to do that for the most part. And then, you know, that's coming through to the tap. So even so my filtered water that my family is drinking is, you know, fairly clean. It's a good filter, but the regular supply of water, tap water, is adjusting and moving throughout the year. So not all cities are super transparent about what's happening with that. I live in a city that I think believes in keeping the people up to date pretty much on what's going on. But yeah, that's something that people have to consider. Definitely.
Yeah, it's absolutely a thing. And I don't think people in general really stop to consider what is in their water. Just here in Chicago, we've got the pet coke runoff from just a local industrial plant just on the other side in Indiana, where there's loads of refineries and things right on the shoreline, and all that stuff is going right into the water. Same thing, lots of agricultural runoff, which creates, you know, a lot of these blooms that you were talking about. There's so much stuff that winds up in municipal water. We have a close friend that all of us are acquainted with, whose brother works at the local water treatment plant out here, and has told us loads of horror stories. There's all kinds of stuff that goes in there. So for me, municipal water is only one part of an overall solution. It's kind of a fallback. I think we'll touch on that momentarily, but with respect to the chloramine, a technique that I'm sure we're all familiar with is, if you're going to use that water for anything related to plants, or, you know, pickling through brining and anything that we're going to consume, if you have the ability to do so, is allow the water to sit out for 24 hours, and most of that will off gas. So you won't have the same degree of.
That doesn't work with chloramine. Only works with chlorine.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
I knew for chlorine, but chloramine wasn't necessarily aware. Interesting.
Yeah. So in our environments, I mean, whether you're in a rural environment or urban environment, we have usually some sort of municipal supply, possibly a well, although if you're probably more likely to be a well in a rural environment. Cisterns. Up until the 1940s, actually most of the water supply for the city of Bloomington were household cisterns that were buried. So that has been the case in the past. And I think it's kind of cool when we find one that's managed, it's possible to repair and recover. And then there's bottled water and store-bought water. And then there's water catchment options. So yeah, I'm just curious about, in terms of sourcing water as a permaculture person, what do you prefer and how do you like to set it up?
We have tap water, but we also have actually a carboy, and a crock. So, and that's the drinking water that I prefer, and it's also what we've done to get around we use that for fermentation and stuff, and that so they have the 5-gallon carboys. For a while, I was filling them up at the grocery store at the reverse osmosis water. It's like $2.50 for the fill up. But now I've been going to my friend's house and getting their well water. But either way, it gives me a lot of options, and I actually have now like 5-gallon containers. So if something happens, I can. Sorry, my son woke up. I can switch gears. So I'm just gonna go take care of him, and I'll be right back, guys. Okay.
Yeah. No worries, Milton. Go ahead, William.
For me, it's about having multiple sources of water. So I'm big fan of rainwater catchment where it's possible, and then what you do with water after you use it is the other piece. So I'm a big proponent of gray water as well. You're finding secondary and tertiary uses of water that have already been through a cycle, I think, is an essential piece of that as well.
Yeah, for us, we have municipal water that we filter for drinking and cooking. It's a good idea to have a shower filter because you absorb a lot through your skin as well for your health. And there's a lot of stressors especially in an urban environment, you're already exposed. So I would be a big fan of that for people in an urban environment, to have a shower filter that you just screws on your shower head and you can take it place to place or whatever you need to do. We have some rain barrels in places that make sense off of gutters for irrigating the garden. And then we also have storage in a pond in our backyard that we use for watering seedlings and for some water management. And then we do a lot of organic matter building up in the soil, so that the hugel mound, we have a couple of hugel mounds and lots of organic matter incorporated into our garden beds. So they hold water as well. All that carbon holds water. Every unit holds, I've heard numbers of 4 to 8 units of water for every unit of carbon. So the more organic matter and carbon you have in your soil, the more it will hold and then release water to plants as needed. So when we get into that as a strategy for mitigating these huge rain events that we have now in this area, having really good organic matter in your soil will help with stormwater issues. Potentially, it will help with some, it won't help with everything. And then I think about other water strategies. Yeah, the reuse, and I like to think too, when you reuse water that's been used for dishes or that has some useful nutrient in the water from shower, that's actually food for plants. And so in that whole energy cycling and or energy flow and material cycling component of permaculture, you get the benefit of that without an additional cost to you. And so why not? I think that's it's good household economy right there.
Absolutely. You're matching the output to its use, and then also perhaps a touch. I only glanced at it, but I think it's just something I already take for granted. But any municipal water should be filtered before use. I just think that's kind of Act 1, Scene 1, really.
Yeah, and pond and groundwater, well water should be tested fairly frequently. If you don't have somebody monitoring that water quality for you, you need to check, because you don't know what's seeping in water tables. It's a good idea to check it. Yeah, definitely.
And to what you were just saying, a key component, one of the axioms that we throw out a lot in permaculture is that the best place to store water is in the ground, because this is where you can get maximum use for it. This recharges wells, water table. It makes it available to plants, as you were just saying. It's really the best place to store water.
Yeah, and and for sort of hyper urban environments where there's not a lot of soil, of open ground to build that on. So what are some good strategies there? We could talk about those for a few minutes.
I see Milton's back.
Yeah, I am. We got my son Emmett with us. We're both playing sick today. Yeah, one of the things that I didn't get to mention was water catchment, and that's kind of on my list of things to get set up here. Actually, we've got asphalt shingles, so that can be an issue with the water quality. But we're gonna the roof needs to be in the garage needs to be redone, and that we're gonna get with a metal roof, and that should help improve stuff. And that's actually gonna be where I'm gonna start collecting water first.
Yeah. So that's a great point, that the surfaces, that an enameled metal roof, or considering the water quality off asphalt shingle, which is better for plants, not so good for human consumption. Those surfaces make a big difference, and surfaces in the city tend to be concrete or brick, some siding. So so they're back to sort of strategies for urban environment. At that point, you're doing catchment potentially in barrels or cisterns. Still a big fan of cisterns in the urban environment whenever possible. William, did you want to add something there?
Oh, just that, I had tar asphalt shingles on my house in Los Angeles, and so for that reason, we were never collecting for consumption. But yeah, cisterns make so much sense. Wherever you can do them, I'm a big fan. And so in the city, I think that again, as many different water sources as you can tap. We always talk about building those redundancies into your design. So if you can depend on rainwater catchment, if you can store that in a cistern, if you can, count on some amount of municipal water, if you can get secondary and tertiary uses out of, the water that's it's coming out of your tap or that you've collected on site. This is a little bit more of a resilient, robust water strategy. It's going to give you some degree of, resilience in the face of, disaster, or if one thing dries up, you've got access to other things. So I think it's essential. I think it's just, water is one of the very first things I look at in a design. I think everything else kind of is predicated on an availability of some amount of water. So you have to kind of start there.
Yeah. And I'm noticing that we're kind of running out of time, and there are like a lot of solutions and a lot of thoughts about water strategies. Like, potentially if you're not going to use that water for drinking, you could use it to flush a toilet if you're going to still flush, use flush toilets. Instead of paying.
That's a whole nother rabbit hole right there.
Right. And so, and I'm thinking about permeable pavers, when we can get those in. Even maybe it's not the whole parking lot, but maybe it's, like a part of the parking lot, to intercept water flow, or, and at this point we're talking about commercial design, neighborhood control, neighborhood scale, water management solutions, curb cuts, things like that we've talked about. So like I said, we're running out of time. I guess I'll do a closing round from each of you on final thoughts, and then, kind of conclude for today. So if Milton is up for it. Yeah.
I'll give it a try. A little out of sync here. But, I think how we deal with the water, and not just us personally, and in our, own personal water systems, but also as a community, is just super important. And it's nice to see when, they put in a rain garden down the street, several of them actually. So, around me. So it's really nice to see people being a little more conscious about that sort of thing.
So I'd say that I think I'm very much focused on hyper-urban strategies, just because that's kind of where I am at the moment. So I probably didn't give as much lip service to ponds as I perhaps should have. I think those having as many water features as possible on your property is always a good idea. And there's a lot we could have discussed on water harvesting earthworks and things to sort of shore that up and take full advantage of the resource as it becomes available. But in short, if I have to make a pitch to close it out, it would probably be around the flush toilet, which I think is one of our most challenging design items that we're looking at. That accounts for about a third of domestic water use, and so just think of how we could change that around. I'm a big fan of composting toilets, always have been, and so there's a lot more to say there. But I think we'll relegate the rest of this to the show notes so that everyone can follow up and look at links and things afterward on their own time. So that is me. Check.
All right. Well, I think for my final thoughts on water management, for now, I would say part of what we have to face in the Midwest as well with climate change are these sudden rain events where, we have these potential for drought, and we want to catch water and put it to good use, but we also want to have good design and good strategy for not having water where we don't want it when we don't want it. And this is really on my mind because I've lived in the house that I'm in for 16 years, and we've never had any issues and with a damp basement. And then we had a flood that was 4 inches above the subfloor. So recently, we're reevaluating and reconstructing what we need to do to move forward. And I know a lot of people deal with damp apartments or flooded apartments or basements or water issues and stormwater. So we want to go into all of this a lot more when we do our urban permaculture workshop on March 30th. Thanks for hanging out with us, this podcast. We're excited about including this in our collaboration and hope you find some useful information, some things to think about. We'll definitely link up some resources in the show notes, and you can find out more about our upcoming urban permaculture workshop on March 30th at glpdc.info. We also have an online permaculture design course starting the 3rd week of June. So if you found this useful, we'd love your feedback. Please comment, like, and subscribe. And we'll see you next time. Bye.